welcome to the Carolinas Luxury Real Estate Podcast Season 5 opener. For all those new to the podcast, please feel free to follow the link in this episode to our past seasons and explore all the great luxury real estate content. On today's episode, we are talking about the 2022 Fall Luxury Markets Report for Asheville, North Carolina. I'm your host, Sam Sparks, and joining me to discuss Asheville's Fall Market Report is Jonathan Hunter, the broker in charge for Ivester Jackson Blackstream. Thanks for joining me today, Jonathan.
Hey, Sam, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're glad you could jump on with us today. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and get going. So with all the talk about real estate markets slowing down, how has the last quarter or so been in Asheville?
Sure. Yeah, West North Carolina has seen a really nice third quarter. You know, we started pulling those numbers, and by and large, the luxury markets were up across the region in both sell-through as well as showing activity. And so it's been really nice. Henderson County, sort of prime example, in the third quarter, the luxury market saw 85% increase in sales activity versus the third quarter in 2021, which was incredible. I don't think we realize these things when we're in the midst of the current quarter, and then you start to reflect on it and pull those numbers, and you're like, oh, okay, well, we're really doing well. And so that 85% increase totally bucks the national news and trends that you're seeing in the narratives that we see. And so it's been really nice. The showing activity is also up in a lot of areas. I pulled just in preparation for today's meeting, I pulled the showing trends for ultra luxury market in Arden before our call today, and so ultra luxury meaning like $2 million plus homes. And so Arden in the last 30 days, and I did pull last 30 days rather than third quarter, but they had a over 250% increase in showing activity in the in the ultra luxury range. So it has really been nice, and we are bucking the national trend here in West North Carolina. So,
Wow, that's incredible. Those were some pretty high numbers.
yeah, it was. Like I said, it was sort of eye-opening to start looking at those numbers because we do hear a lot of doom and gloom, and so yeah, it was very eye-opening.
Nice. So, Jonathan, are you noticing differences between the different price segments, under a million, or ultra luxury?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing a ton of movement again in that ultra luxury range, specifically over the last 6 to 8 months. And so in the previous 5 years or so, that ultra luxury range, it would take some time to see sell through in those ranges, depending on where the property was located and what time of year those properties came on. And so we're starting to really see a ton of sell through in those ultra luxury ranges. And so but like you said, in some of the other segments, below $1 million, those tend to be more interest rate driven, more sensitive to those interest rates. And I checked, I guess it was yesterday or Friday, that interest rates were just a tad over 7%. And so folks that are reliant on mortgage rates, we are starting to see things start to slow down just a tad, and people are taking a step back to say, okay, do I stay put in my house and wait to see what happens with the interest rate? So it's sort of a mixed bag. Luxury, where it's not as rate sensitive, we're still seeing a ton of sell through. In the mid market, which we consider 500,000 to 999,000. We are starting to see it at least take a pause and folks to at least asking those questions. Do I need to pull the trigger on something now? So it's definitely been a mixed bag to answer your question.
Yeah, no, I had a feeling that price point difference is definitely affecting the market for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, it is very rate sensitive. Specifically, if once you get really under under 700,000. I mean, we're seeing probably 75% of those deals under 700,000. Probably 75% of those being conventional mortgage transactions, and so it really does start to hamper that market a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does the market's activity look right now compared to, last year's activity at the same time?
Yep. So activity in the third quarter was up pretty much across most of the segments. Now, there were a couple here and there that saw some sort of flat activity, but by and large, we did see an increase in the third quarter with both showing activity as well as a sell-through. And so West North Carolina has stayed fairly steady. In preparation for the podcast today, I pulled some numbers for the last 30 days, and I was pleasantly surprised in the $1 million+ segment in Buncombe County. We showed 505 showings in the $1 million+ range versus 440 this time last year. And so that was a sort of only a 15% increase. But when you look at Henderson County, which is one county over, they saw like almost 100% increase in the luxury segment year over year in the last 30 days. So that just gives us sort of an idea of post third quarter. But as far as the third quarter goes, as it indicated in our market report, I mean, things are still fairly steady across the West North Carolina region. So,
Wow, yeah, that's great. To your point, it's even higher. So
yeah, and like I said, I did want to pull some activity over the last 30 days just to sort of compare that with what we saw in the third quarter market report, and things are continuing to move. And I didn't know what I was going to come up with when I started pulling those numbers in preparation for today, and it's still trucking right along. So it's definitely a pleasant surprise for us.
yeah, no, that's great news. Keep them coming, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Now, on the luxury front, have increased mortgage rates impacted some buyers? Obviously, you kind of touched on that already. And what percentage of deals are cash offers?
Yeah, so the luxury segment, as I touched on earlier, it's a little less sensitive to the rate hike that we've seen, and so in the third quarter, it looked like, and I pulled some numbers, looked like about 60% of luxury home sales, so anything over $1 million, was a cash transaction versus a conventional mortgage transaction. And so, in the same thing in Henderson County, I pulled some of those numbers as well, and you're looking around the same. I think it was 55% were cash transactions. And so, and then in the mid market, it's something totally different. I mean, you're looking at probably 75-80% of those homes being conventional mortgaged homes. And so yeah, it does make a difference. I'm hoping that we're going to start to see that interest rate flatten out. I mean, everything's sort of trending towards that. Last week, I think it was Thursday of last week, that came there was a study that came out that said inflation was starting to ease. And so I'm hopeful that the Fed sees some of those things and says, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't do quite a drastic rate hike as we have in the past. So, but to get back to your question, yes, we are seeing mortgage rates affect sell-through, but mainly in that mid-market, that 500 to 999, rather than the luxury segment, which is again, not as dependent on the rate.
Yeah. No, I mean, I follow the market in that 500 range. I mean, you're seeing price cuts almost every week because people are struggling with these higher interest rates. So,
yeah, and I think we'll continue to see those price hikes. The way that I sort of explain it to folks is that people in that 500, 400, 500, $600,000 range, they tend to look at what the payment is going to be, not necessarily what they're buying the house for, or what it's necessarily what it's worth at that moment, but what the payment's going to be. And so when the interest rate goes to 7 or a little over 7%, then the buying power goes down. And so, yeah, we're starting to see price reductions in that lower range where sellers are starting to say, okay, well, I've got to reduce my price in order to have success in the market. So.
Absolutely. So are we starting to see increases in inventory, and how did those levels compare to like the historic levels pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we're not seeing a ton of inventory come on the market, and so we're remaining fairly low as far as inventory goes. Even if you compare that to pre-pandemic levels, and I think part of that is the fact that folks that are in that 500 to 999 range are looking at the rate and saying, okay, do I really want to sell? And if I've got a 3 or 4% interest rate, do I want to sell and go to a 6.5 or 7% interest rate? So, we are still seeing historically low inventory, even in the luxury market. We're still seeing, and I think that's what's kept. I think that's what stabilized pricing too for us, at least in West North Carolina, is the inventory is still low, but demand tends to be pretty high still, and so it has kept prices fairly stable in that luxury segment. And so yeah, I think I think inventory remains low, but there are some bright spots in that. So.
Nice. Well, good. So what variables will impact luxury real estate activity moving forward into, the first quarter of 2023?
Yeah, and so as you know, specifically the luxury market is tied into some external factors such as financial markets, supply and demand, government monetary policy, and so last week I think it was we saw the biggest increase in the stock market for a 1 week period, the biggest increase since 2020, and so that certainly is a bright spot for luxury buyers because they are starting to see that the markets are doing a little better. I think getting that midterm election behind us, as far as the financial markets go, really helped out, and so yeah, I think long term we're going to see those financial markets continue to climb, which is always nice for that luxury segment. And West North Carolina tends to be a second and third home destination, and so when those luxury buyers see financial markets doing well, then they're more apt to come to a place like Asheville or Henderson County somewhere, Highlands, Cashers area, and put a little more money into the market and buy a luxury home as a second or third home or an investment home. And so yeah, we think that 2023 is going to continue a trend, and I think we're well positioned to capture that.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Well, hopefully interest rates keep going lower and the financial industry keeps going up.
Yep, that's what we're all hoping for at this point.
Yeah. All right. Well, once again, thank you, Jonathan, for joining me today and talking about Asheville's 2022 Fall Markets Report. It was great picking your brain.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Sam. And as you said, we hope that everything continues on the same trend that we're going on now. So thank you again for having me on.
Absolutely. And real quick, how can people contact you if they have any questions or need help with real estate?
Yeah, so again, Jonathan Hunter, the broker in charge here at the Ivester Jackson Blackstream office in Asheville, North Carolina. The office number here, you can reach me 828-367-9001. And so yeah, feel free to reach out if you've got questions as it relates to real estate in West North Carolina.
Sounds good. Well, if anyone wants more information about the firm, you can visit us at ivesterjackson.com. Thank you so much for watching. Take care.